Well, I mentioned that in 1973 I heard about Buddhism for the first time, immediately became interested and started studying more about it. Now, the monk who was my very first teacher asked me to co-teach with him in 1976. I wasn't a nun then, but he felt that the female element would be helpful, and also that by that time apparently I already knew the elementary answers so that I could be helpful. And I found that most inspiring. For me, the teaching was the most inspiring part of it all because of the fact that I simply had to know. Because you can't sit there in front of a lot of people and know less than they do. And so it was such an impetus for me to learn and practice that it gave me the strength and the energy to go ahead and actually grow on this path. In 1978, I established a forest monastery for this English monk in Australia on 200 acres of ground, and he became the abbot there. And I also lived there, and I trained with him in the not only in the discourses of the Buddha, which he taught every day, but also in the rules for monks and nuns, and the whole monastic practice that we have in the Theravadan tradition. And so in 1979, I went to Sri Lanka and ordained as a nun there in one of the big city temples. And then I came back to Australia and again was co-teaching with the English monk. And then I went to Sri Lanka again in 81 and 82. And as I was teaching there in Sri Lanka, some lay people, the idea was that it would be nice to have a nunnery on an island in Ratgama Lake, because this lake also houses a monastery which was established in 1911 by Venerable Nana Tiloka, who was a German monk. And of course, me being German-born, am known in Sri Lanka as the German nun, and although I carry an American passport. And hadn't been back to Germany in about 45 years by that time, but I still speak perfect German. So this Nuns Island came about through the suggestion and support of some Sri Lankan lay people, and then I got a lot of donations from my students all over the world, because by that time I had been teaching very regularly in different countries, in Western countries, and so that island was started started building there in 83 and was completed in 84, and we had the opening ceremony in 1984. Yes, well, I kept it going for 5 years, and I opened it up for Western women who would like to practice there for a minimum of 3 months. And so we had many women of many different countries, America and Australia, New Zealand, Germany, and England, and many different countries came there at different times. And we also had some of the Western women who became nuns there. And in 89, or actually in 88, the political unrest in Sri Lanka was becoming quite unbearable, actually, and in 89 it became so bad that I thought it was time to leave. There was no personal danger, but what it was that the infrastructure of the country was becoming so broken up that it was difficult to mail letters and to go on a bus and to use a train and to use a telephone, and you never knew from one day to the next what was happening. So I left in April of 89. By that time, my German students had decided that they wanted to establish a center in Germany, and so I went to Germany, and a new center was established there, and I went there in May of 89 for the first time. So it's now been a year And on the island itself, there's a Dutch nun now. And I asked a committee of my Sri Lankan lady students to look after the island, and they did, and they are doing that. And they also got the Dutch nun to be there, who looks after the island and who is also teaching there. And I'm intending to visit at the end of this year for a month. And otherwise, I divide my time now between Germany, where there's this new center, and Australia, where there's also a new hermitage. And so I spend time in those countries mostly, but I'm also come to California once a year and teach here. The role of women in Buddhism. Well, in America especially, the women are far more outspoken than in any other country I've been to. Outspoken in a way where they are actually making themselves heard. I can compare that, for instance, with Germany, where the women's movement is smiled upon and has had really no impact yet whatsoever. I think it's very similar in England, and not strong at all. The strongest women are in America, and it's a very necessary step, especially, I think, in the spiritual life, because the women have always been the strongest supporters of any religion, and yet they're never heard from. As an example, on any given Poya Day, which is a holy day in Sri Lanka, you will find for 300 women and about 10 men in the temple. And I think that this would apply wherever we go. Now, in my courses, there are always more women than men, which I thought was due to the fact that I am a woman, but I've heard meanwhile that it is the same wherever you go, that there are far more women attracted to the spiritual life. So if that is the case, they're practicing, so they need to be heard from. And I find that women have the capacity for devotion and commitment, which is an absolutely integral part of any spiritual practice, because it is the part of the heart, the love part. So when they do their practice, they've already got an opening. And there's particular contribution to the Buddhist path obviously needs to be that love aspect, where a woman can educate herself, train herself, develop her lovingness, where it becomes no longer directed personally, but becomes a quality of her heart. And as she does that, she will be not only a great boon to her friends and her family, but it will be of immense value to humanity at large. The more love there is, the easier it will be to live on this planet. And each woman that actually trains herself in this non-discriminating love, just as a heart quality, will be a peacemaker par excellence. There's no greater peacemaker than that. And I feel that this is women's role in any spiritual path, particularly, of course, the Buddhist path, because that's the one I know and pursue. And now we've just had the women's conference, which I attended, and I thought it was lovely to see so many women together practicing different aspects of Buddhism, having diverse opinions, and yet being able to love each other.